yeah, so for the next panel, and I just want to quickly share some points briefly before Sonia and Douglas go ahead, because they've been in the heart of many things. And these are two inspiring entrepreneurs, well, not entrepreneurs, sorry, people that left everything and moved to Lesbos to empower asylum seekers, have made Lesbos their home and have come under a lot of fire. And I think there's going to be a lot of debate possibly between Douglas and I. So before we go into that, and you know, this is what it's about, different opinions. But I do want to say the one thing about the public discourse, Christo, that you mentioned is, you know, I think in 2015, people are stuck with those numbers in their minds. And I think it's important actually to put it on a slide. And I didn't have the opportunity, just didn't put it together, but just want to give you quick numbers for Greece. And for those who are watching, in Greece in 2015, Arthur, sorry, can you mute, please? Thank you. So in 2015, there was 856,000 people that came into Greece in 2015, 856,000. The following year was 173,000 in 2016. 2017, 30,000. 2018, 32,000. 2019, 60,000. Christo, to your point, we don't have a refugee crisis. And I understand that in Turkey, there's 4 million people that are there as well. But from Greece has got about 150,000. But from a European perspective, it's these numbers. Germany alone has taken 1 million and showed incredible solidarity. So we need to change the misunderstanding that people have to raise better awareness. And specifically on Lesbos, 20,000 people. We're losing. We in discourse about European values over, and Lesbos being a hotspot for 20,000 people. Now, 25,000 for Lesbos context is huge for Lesbos, but in the context of Europe, it's nothing. And I want to highlight just one last point before Douglas and Sonia speak, is that, and then Arthur makes the introduction, 66% of the population of the refugee asylum seekers on Lesbos is women and children. 66% women and children. 70% of those children are under 12 years old. So people really have the wrong perception. And it's important that we find ways to better inform one another, understanding people's fears, and not, as you mentioned, Christo, this thing of this person's a fascist, this one is this, because people have got their fears and concerns about, they're concerned about their own futures that they feel is being pulled under the carpet from them. So, which is disorientating them with a lack of solutions based on fear that the rest of Europe doesn't want anyone, because every time they hear about Lesbos, they don't hear about the Rudis, the Israels, the Jalals, the Lubnas, and Parwanas and the like. You know, so we need to raise better awareness. So I just wanted to mention that part. So Arthur, over to you, if you can make an introduction to our next inspiring guests, and I'm holding my breath to see how it goes.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm activating my video. Thank you for this insight, Christophe. And before I jump on our next speakers, I would like to say we had a question from Daphne, who asked to provide, it was a question for Christophe, but actually the question was, could you please give us a brief overview of the current situation in Greece? And I think that Vasily has answered it in a way. So I hope it was great for you, Daphne. And if it was not, please tell us, and we will ask Christophe to respond to it. Okay, for the next panel, actually, before I'm introducing our next speakers, I would like to retell one more time the panel's main theme, which is showcasing existing solutions that have been created on the island on Lesbos following the refugee crisis, as to illustrate the solutions and to highlight the solidarity demonstrated on a day-to-day basis. Please, yes, that's basically it. So for our next speakers, I would like to introduce Sonia Nandzik and Douglas Herman, and also to let us know that Rodi has joined us, and he will have the talk after Sonia's and Douglas presentation or opinions. Okay, actually, for Sonia and Douglas, I'm going to say that they are the founders of Refocus Media Lab. Please, Sonia and Douglas, introduce yourself and welcome to our summit. And we are very pleased to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Starting this discussion, actually not starting because we organizations working on Lesbos are trying to be part of the solution for a longer time. And we're happy that the hearing is bringing all of us together to discuss what can be done and how we can work together. And we truly believe that this is what we really need at this moment on Lesbos, in Greece and Europe as a whole. But starting from the beginning, maybe some history, as we've been asked to present our organization as part of those existing solutions right now on Lesbos. So we both, I think, started this journey, or maybe even a speed run towards humanitarian aid and building Refocus around 2016. We both worked on several projects. Doug was a photographer, journalist, and teacher working in the States. I was working in politics almost my whole life, actually, for the European Parliament and for different politicians, and at some point had a change of heart. Started working at the Serbian-Hungarian border when the crisis hit very, very heavily. And this is where Doug was doing his journalistic project. And we met there. And since that point, we worked on several different projects in several different places that brought us to Lesbos. I mean, actually, right now after Serbia, like Lesbos was our next, Athens, and then Lesbos was our next project. Then we went around to several different places where refugee crisis or refugee challenge, as Christos said, was happening. And we did the circle and came back to Lesbos. Why did we came back to Lesbos? First of all, we realized that there are certain gaps in humanitarian aid that we would like to try to tackle. The gap was in education, and not just any education, because if there is any education in humanitarian aid, it's usually education for little children, usually age 5 to 12, where children learn basics. There's almost nothing for teenagers except for language skills. And there's absolutely nothing for young adults, people in their 20s, who maybe did not get great education, maybe lost years of education because of war in their country, because of persecution, because of long journey to Europe. And at some point, they will have to start living in new societies, new countries in Europe that are highly demanding when it comes to skills, when it comes to your position on the labor market. So we, after seeing what is happening with people whom we were working with so far, so let's say people in Serbia, refugees from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq that we met there, and we saw their journey to Europe, to different countries where when they were still allowed to cross farther. In our view, their life was not that much better. Yes, their life was definitely safer, but the new reality when it comes to securing their living, supporting their families, was not great, because they did not have skills that they could work with in Germany, in France, in Italy. So we decided to focus on skills that we could give them, that they can actually work on very fast, to catch up on education or just to change their path so far. We did it also because we met so many highly ambitious individuals on our way, and it was so clear and at the same time so sad to us that they will not be able to return to education ever, because if we're talking about boys who left Syria when they were maybe 15, maybe 16, they barely touched some high school education, and now they spent several years in Turkey very often. They managed to cross to Lesbos. They stayed on Lesbos for a while. Then they stayed on mainland Greece, and then suddenly they're 20. They cannot go back. They cannot catch up on the whole high school. When we speak about the ones who actually got a high school diploma and would like to continue their journey in education and go to universities, it is also highly unlikely because of all the requirements they have to fulfill and also support themselves while studying. The global average for enrollment to universities or any higher education institution is 37%, but for refugees, it's only 3%. So this is how unlikely it is that they will be able to actually catch up with their education and get skills that will allow them to support themselves and their families. When we did some of our projects in several places like Morocco, like Bangladesh, it showed us that first of all, Lesbos is the place to be because refugees will always come to this place. And they were staying at that point when we started programming on Lesbos, they were staying longer and longer on Lesbos. And it was obvious that they have to do something with this time. They have to work on their future. Living inside Moria camp is absolutely dreadful and should not happen, should not take place in Europe. But if you already have to stay there because you're waiting for your asylum decision, you have to force yourself and use this time to do something for your future. Bangladesh also showed us that this so-called refugee crisis in Europe is absolutely solvable, that our crisis is more of a political crisis than a crisis of the scale, because Bangladesh suddenly got almost like 900,000 Rohingya refugees within 3-4 months, suddenly a very poor country. We were talking about European Union, united organization that brings help support about wealthiest countries in the world, basically, that can actually support each other, that can have systems that can work. Very, very short. I know I spoke a lot, but Doug will just tell you about our system and what we actually do.
Yeah, so Sonia touched, thank you, Vasily, for having us again, and for Peter from Cultural Infusion, and Christos and Rudy. It's a pleasure to be on the panel with all of you. Sonia did say a lot about our motivations. For me, from a perspective of being a teacher and a journalist, my goal had in 2016, the first time I came to Lesbos, was to bring this situation into the classrooms in America to educate people, to do a lot of what Cultural Infusion is talking about, which is to break down these stereotypes and to get people to engage with the people living the situation, not just seeing what they see in a flash 2.5-minute piece on the news. We wanted them to meet the real people, and we wanted them to see themselves in the experience. And then after a year of bringing this into the classrooms and teaching, it became very clear that nothing was really changing on the ground for the people that we were engaging with. So what would happen if we brought the classroom into the crisis area? So basically the program that Refocus is modeled off of is something that we were successfully building in America for youth and for young media creators to have the ability to go to university with high level skills, or to go right into the workplace and to develop into independent careers as media creators, or just take those modern communication skills and apply them to any career path that they chose. And that's really what we're doing on Lesbos now. And we're giving young people an opportunity to develop something for their futures. And basically, we talk to our students all the time about how they have to look at Lesbos as the university that they are forced to attend, that this is a chance for them. And one of our students, Yasir, put it best. He said that even in the most challenging times, it's an opportunity for you to better yourself. And this ended up going on to a CNN My Freedom project just a couple of months ago. And it really inspired a ton of people globally to say that if this young boy and if these young people can deal with this, can endure this situation and still come out better for it, then that we need to support them somehow. We need to continue to engage and expand the programming to ensure that they have something to give other than unskilled labor in the next couple of years of their lives.
Thank you very much, Doug and Sonia. Your work is extremely inspiring, and you know, the skills of the future that you guys are providing, and the hope that you're giving to everyone. So, can I ask you, do you see yourself as a social enterprise? And was that so when you guys came, is that how you decided? What made you actually decide to stay on Lesbos? You know, so did you, from a social enterprise, do you see yourself as a social enterprise?
Absolutely. The program that I referenced that was back in Philadelphia, it started out, it became a career and technical education program that focused on media creation skills, photography, video, web design, graphic design, live streaming, events. And before we even became a funded CTE program, we had a successful social enterprise and business where our young media creators that we trained were being hired by the Philadelphia International Airport or major partners in the city. City Hall was coming to us for media creation skills and projects. And this was an opportunity for them to build not only a personal portfolio of work, but also the experience that is necessary of how to deal with a client, how to present yourself professionally, how to actually advance your skills by actively working on real life projects, not just this theoretical experience in the classroom. And we wanted to take the same thing and bring it to Lesbos, and not just for asylum seekers, but for locals. We know that the island of Lesbos and Greece in general has been whacked for a long time now by economic downturn. And there are plenty of young people on the island who don't have the same opportunities that you have in other parts of the world. And they deserve the same opportunity. Technology is now in a place where tools are more available, connection is better than it has ever been. There really aren't any excuses as to why people in this situation or living on Lesbos cannot engage with media creators and with institutions anywhere in the world. The borders are not really there. Geographically and physically they're there, but technologically they don't exist. And currently the projects that our students are working on are proving that. They're collaborating with editors in New York City and London and Germany and Berlin every day. Still more.
So as an absolute global organization, global experience, I want to ask the question, and for viewers, and we've got Peter here as well, that we're saying there's a convergence and now the middle between non-profit, for-profit, public sector organizations. These organizations as social enterprises are what people would deem as NGOs, and especially on Lesbos. And so the situation and the impression that has been created about NGOs. So what is your feeling about that? What is your thoughts around that? Because I mean, for the viewers that are not watching, there's this perception and I want to give I'd like to present some insights, thoughts from my side, but I want to hear first your thoughts about that, because you know, and one of the panelists, we had invited someone else. We heard it from Siniparksi, but one of the greatest success stories on Lesbos for me is Iliachtida. From 5 people in January 2015, they've got 300 people that are working there, about 300 people, Greek youth, that are doing phenomenal and impactful work. They're looking after about 200 unaccompanied minors for housing, and many, many, many other projects that they've kickstarted as an organization, which is truly inspiring. Just them alone, one organization as a social enterprise. We've had people come from around the world, and we have the pleasure of listening to the two of you, both of you, that made a move to Lesbos permanently. And yet there's this, I want you to share your thoughts about the local perception and this mass challenge towards NGOs. So if you could share some thoughts on that and the why. Why do you think that is so? That's what I want to know, the why. You know, so more focus on the why, because we want, this is a constructive discussion because we want to understand why. Why is this an issue? You know, and how can we solve it? How can we change it? So, please, your thoughts.
I think the why, it connects to the fact that in the Venn diagram that Peter put up, that everyone's in these like kind of these silos. They're in their respective corners and they're not spending enough time in the middle. And in the months leading up to the Corona outbreak, we were actively engaging in promoting that to change. We wanted people to meet in the center. We said, what would happen if you brought community leaders from the communities inside Moria, NGO leaders, political leaders, local leaders, people that are from Antifa movements that are basically showing solidarity with anyone, with all people on the island. What if you brought all of those people to the center and you actually helped them develop some sort of like mission statement, a list of, so to speak, demands to the EU, to central government, to local government to say, this is our way out. And our way out has to include everyone's voices. And if it's not going to include all voices, then there's no way out. Then we're just going to consistently kind of turn on ourselves and each other. And that the true enemy at the moment was misperception, misconception, an absence of dialogue. And if all of these people would just come to the center in a low stakes way, like completely informal, not public, like initially just have it behind closed doors, like literally sit down and all have coffee and talk and hear each other and listen to each other and practice what we do in our classes about everyone has a story. Everyone has a lot below the surface that they don't present to the public regularly. That 85% of who we are as individuals and as organizations and as movements are not reaching the surface because we're not necessarily bringing it to the surface. We have to own that to some degree as well, to say that we don't actually always bring up to the front of a conversation what people need to hear and can connect with. But what would happen if we literally just sat back and listened to everyone in a similar fashion to what now we must do through Zoom connections? What would it look like if it was face to face and everyone sat and and constructively listened to each other and then hear the similarities in the issues?
Leave the stereotypes behind the closed doors, because this is what we truly need on Lesbos. This dialogue cannot happen if we will not leave our pre-thoughts like behind, right? What I mean is that yes, we as NGOs have certain views on the situation. Locals have certain views on situation. Authorities have certain views on situation. And as one of you said, it's not like if you call, I think Christos, you said it, if you call all locals fascists, that's really unfair. Many NGOs believe that locals stopped helping, which is also not true. On the other hand, locals are calling NGOs human traffickers, where is extremely offending to us, as we put basically the savings of our lives to start our foundation. So did many other people who just want to work in the field, right? So just as you cannot say that all refugees are bad people, you cannot say that all people living on Lesbos are just fascists. We have to leave those stereotypes behind and just listen to each other. Come up with just 2-3 solutions. Do not discuss absolutely every single thing and not try to solve the whole refugee crisis at once. Just focus on 1, 2, 3 dimensions of it.
Thank you, Sonia. Peter, before I give the floor to you, I just have one question or statement. Yes. This misconception, so what is the misconception? Just to think about what is the misconception that the locals have? And then the question is, why should the locals make the effort to change, given that it's their island? So I'm just from a perspective of, someone's living in their home comfortably and happy and has got a massive influx of someone different and it's changed their home completely to what it used to be and what they were happy with. And it's now completely been transformed. The question is from the locals, why must I accept that? Why should I carry that burden? And why should I carry that burden for more than 5 years? Because it's been 5 years. There's 40% of the population in Mytilene is asylum seekers. And I often ask the question to anyone from across Europe that comes to Lesbos. I say, how many people has your city or your country got as a percentage of the locals? How many asylum seekers do you have in your country? Because all I'm saying is it's easy to point fingers, but are we really putting ourselves in the local shoes to really, really understand that their lives, their lives being turned complete, their home, what they called home and their comfort has been turned completely upside down. Have we given thought to that part? And then the question is, why must they make the effort to change the misconceptions, which I fully agree with that part. That's the key part. But, just also being from a view of putting ourselves in each other's shoes. But before you answer, I want Peter to make one statement, unless I'll let Peter decide if you can answer that now, some thoughts. Or Peter, because I saw your hand up. So maybe you can take both questions to Doug and Sonia. So you're on mute, Peter.
Yes, it might be a good idea to go back to Sonia. Sorry, and Sonia's colleague's name? Douglas. So Douglas. Maybe they should answer that, and I might continue on from your comment that you made in relation to the perception of NGOs and what we need to do to maybe change that. Thanks.
Okay. Sonia, Douglas?
Yeah, I think first off, the local Greek community in any of these small places should not be dealing with this alone. But that's part of the problem, is that their argument and their problem should be with the policy that forces them to be isolated this way. I think the reason why NGOs have come in here to do this work is because they see the need, and they can't, and these are good people who have come through to say we need to find a way to make an impact, specifically considering the context of today, to represent the ideals of this continent, to represent the ideals of modernity, to say that these individuals should have supports. And if those supports are not present, we will fill that void. That's why NGOs came in. And then the perception becomes that those NGOs have figured out a way to basically almost like gamify the situation and profit from it. And that's the misconception that we want to really break down, but that's not going to happen if there isn't engagement. Specifically to your point of like, why should the local community engage in the solutions? Because it's in their best interest. The geographical reality is that Lesvos has always been a crossing point. There has always been movement and migration through these islands into Central Europe. It is never going to stop. The policies that the current government will put in place to try to limit it or minimize it or cut it off completely or criminalize it will fade. This administration, this movement, at some point or another, if we take the longer view on this, they will not be in power forever. And while policies will change, the geographical reality of your distance, the proximity to Turkey, is going to mean that Lesvos will continue to be a potential melting pot for cross-culturalism and collaboration. Or it could become a strike point and a flashpoint for discord. And the local community needs to find a way to push for their best interests as well, and engage with people to have a positive outcome. They should push the central government, they should push the European governments to say, do not leave us here to fend for ourselves. It's unfair. And we've been saying that since we arrived in 2016. But at this current moment in time, throwing our hands up in the air on any side of the equation, throwing our hands up in the air and just complaining or shifting the conversation or the physical engagement to something that's not safe and it's not legal, or letting the individuals who are happy to do that have the loudest voice, that's dangerous, that's a problem. And right now, Lesvos' reputation's on the line. And the locals on the island need to reclaim the reputation that it once had, which was that of solidarity, which was that of representing European ideals. And it's fading. That's no longer what it's being seen as, because these loud voices have become the only voices, or they're just so loud that the other voices can't be heard. So we need this solidarity on the ground to become a groundswell that becomes so much louder and so much more cohesive that that small group of people who right now are dominating the conversation become more reflective and representative of their size. They have an outsized impact and outsized presence right now. And the local community has a need to support its own ideals. And I don't believe that this is the ideals of the community. I never have, and I never will. This is not the ideals of the lesbian community.
So thanks, Doug. I just want to comment again to say 20,000 people, 25,000 people is about 40% of the local population. So it's almost, for example, would you allow, and just give some context, would you allow a stranger in need into your home? You might allow them for a day, a month, whatever it is. So just from a context perspective, let's also understand from the local people, it's their home. So imagine someone comes into your home and is staying in your home. You thought you'd help them out for a week, a month, 2 months, and now the person's permanently in your home. And I'm just and now no one's providing a solution. So I fully agree with you that the solution needs to come. It's not going to come from government. It's going to come from us. We need to, in our communities across Europe, be able to have these kind of dialogues and discussions and showcase and celebrate people such as Rudy, such as Israel, and our other speakers to raise the better awareness and show the solidarity to local people, especially to local people, because honestly speaking, the same local people that have been criticized for a long time, and many of them that are considered as friends, have been carrying the weight of European values, in my opinion, on Lesbos for 5 years, because they've got separate to everything that's changed over the last few years, economic crisis. They are carrying, they've got 40% of the population of asylum seekers, and with everyone else turning a blind eye to them. So if the world's turning a blind eye without any hope of a solution, because it's not necessarily up to the national government, and that causes tension and frustration. The local government can't provide solutions. The regional government can't, national can't. Europe is struggling because it's the voices of the people that need to come up and say, we want support, such as what Germany did in 2015, and just raise better awareness. And this is something I agree we need to work together on doing, but, and having these discussions. So that's, for me,